Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Functional Retirement Podcast, where we merge retirement planning and health. I'm your host, Thatcher Taylor. I'm a certified financial planner. And on this podcast, we're going to explore the convergence of health with retirement planning and how it affects longevity risk, income distribution, protection, estate planning, and everything that goes into an optimal retirement. We're going to do that with some solo shows with myself, with educational videos and topics. But we're also going to utilize expert guests in the fields of retirement planning and health. So without further ado, let's get into it. My name's Thatcher Taylor, the host of the Retirement Lifestyle Podcast, and I brought on Nic Nielsen. So this podcast is the merger between retirement and the lifestyle in retirement, trying to take your retirement to a different level, being able to spend your wealth the way that you want to. Now, Nic Nielsen and I share a commonality with sports in athletics and being able to grow and have a little bit of fun in that sports and competitive world. Now, Nic was just telling us about him going to college, but coming out of college, before you got to where you are with Know My Plan, tell me a little bit about that gap between you going from college to Know My Plan.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and I started my first years of college. I was an engineering major. I graduated with business, had a great experience with my grandfather that really kind of changed the course of my education. And, I quickly realized the job in, sports administration was kind of the emphasis there. And it was too late to kind of change that concentration. But I quickly learned that I didn't want to move to Orlando or New York and do some sort of, internship or entry level position and make $700 a month or something like that. So I applied for some different banking jobs. I knew I wanted to be a financial advisor. And at the time, the only job I could get was a teller. So I started off as a teller at Fifth Third Bank, which is a regional bank based out of Cincinnati, $11.54 an hour. Did that. I don't know if I loved it, but it seemed like a ton of money. My first apartment, $300 a month, great little apartment. And from there, I kind of got into the management trainee route. I got, my Series 6 and 63 license to start be able to do some investment stuff. And then spent a long time as a licensed banker, which was really the greatest thing to ever happen to me because it gave me the ability to talk to people. And then I spent about 5 years as a bank financial planner. And then in 2017, my business partner and I, we went out and we started Know My Plan because we wanted to market the way that we wanted to market. And we never wanted to be in a situation where we had to hand a client off to some trust or wealth management division of the bank because their assets had grown too big. Now, the other end of that spectrum, we also didn't want to hand clients over to a call center because they didn't have enough money on paper to justify working with us. So we want to control the families that we worked with. We didn't want to have a minimum one way or the other. And we just wanted to completely control the message and the narrative.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. So the thing that I really took from that, and you may or may not have noticed it, but that engineering component to where you are now, the content you create, the book that you wrote, you can clearly see some sort of creative engineering view that you put into the things that you build for the prospects and the clients that you end up generating. Have you ever thought of that before?
Yeah, so I'm a very math analytical driven person, flow charts and all that stuff. And I love the engineering classes. I loved just doing the math, the physics, the calculus, the differential equations, give me all of that. But I hated the labs. It was just so boring for me. I just couldn't put myself through it. 3 hours for a white precipitate to form. It just wasn't for me. But yeah, there is a little bit of that engineering mindset. I don't even mind working with engineers. I'm that big of a nerd. I don't mind it, where a lot of people really don't want to work with those folks.
Well, there are those parallels. Financial planning is engineering in a sense. We're not building buildings or bridges or aqueducts or dams or anything like that, but
something much more important. We're building financial plans.
That's right. Building clarity. We're engineering that once you how to get to retirement, and once you get there, is it the vision that you want, and how do you unwrap it all so it makes sense and it's clear and it's functional, just like you're kind of driving across the bridge. You just want to drive smoothly. You almost don't even want to realize that you're on a bridge.
Yeah, not everybody is going to be in a position where they need to build a bridge, but everybody's going to be in a position where they need to build their financial plan. And most people need an architect to build that financial plan. And that's why we exist. And that's why we're passionate about what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're going into working with these clients, so you finally get a hold of Know My Plan in 2017 and you start working, and you'd obviously been cultivating relationships and working with people and communicating with retirees along the way. But seems like the real big time where you actually get to start building and cultivating these relationships with clients. What have you noticed in the past 6 or 7 years? What has struck you most about the retirement planning journey?
I would say the complexity of it, even probably surprised me, the complexity of planning in a low interest rate world. And then the complexity that goes from a quick low interest rate world to a high interest rate world, seemingly overnight, is a pretty critical change, to people in retirees, especially when you factor in, what is the rate of return needed to make the plan work? And I think every one of us is probably struggling with some of those things. I know we have a framework for how we answer those questions. I know you do as well. But I mean, there's certainly some complexity that comes from that we really haven't had, to deal with in the last 40 years as a profession.
That's right. It seems like ever since 2008, 2009, besides maybe a little bit of volatility, 2010, 2011, it's been smooth sailing till this whole COVID debacle. And I think the complexity not only is the nuts and bolts of dealing with new tax laws, Secure Act 2.0, all the changes we have to deal with, the interest rates, all the things are kind of outside of our control, but it's taking the client's behaviors and transitioning them from a great decade to the start of potentially what we all like to call sequence of returns risk in a bad decade. So that seems like something that you and I might be dealing with. Do you see the same things on your end?
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a report, and we can probably put it in the show notes, but it talked about at the beginning of 2022 what the average client expected the returns for the U.S. stock market were going to be over the following 10 years. And I believe the result of that report was either 17 or 18%. So just because the past decade generated, a life-changing 17% annualized return, over a decade for, the U.S. stock market, that is a unfair expectation that the following 10 years would be anywhere near that, right? So you have to have a plan for dealing with sequence of return risk, because the last thing anybody wants to do or needs to do is start selling equity-like investments during a downturn. You have to have somewhere else to go, that break glass in case of emergency, where you can go to take money out when your equity-like investments are down, because you don't want to start the pushing the snowball downhill in a way that you can never catch it by selling your equity-like investments when they're down 20, 30, 40%.
That's right. And that's what we can learn a lot. Well, especially now with more people retiring than ever, baby boomers are coming into retirement. So it's a lot of people that are being involved in this process right now, distributing assets in the way that meets their goals and not trying to ruin it from the beginning, where we have to later on in retirement be like, I'm sorry, you can't spend as much. We spent too much in the beginning because we withdrew or whatever happened. Interest rates changed. So what are you doing? Do you have any specific things that you're doing with some of the clients that you've been working with to help them stay on track?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, I think behaviorally, I think the average 65-year-old today is in a better place than any 65-year-old has ever been in history before, because over the last 20 years, they dealt with the tech bubble. They've dealt with the Great Recession. They've dealt with the pandemic. So they are used to the volatility in the market, and they've experienced that, hey, the market does come back even after horrific events. So, what we're doing is probably very similar to what you're doing, but we encourage all of our clients to have, a minimum of 6 months of expenses, in cash or cash equivalents. And, with a minimum of $25,000, if you own a home, like you might tell me that your expenses are $2,000 a month and 6 times 2 is 12. But if you own a home, you need $25,000 because if you get a water leak or something goes wrong on the roof doesn't care what your monthly expenses are. It's a big cost. So, that's kind of step one. Step two, we want to make sure that we're setting money aside for any major purchases that we have coming up in the next 2 or 3 years. We kind of think that debt is like cancerous cells in the body. If we have a chance to remove them or not let them in, we don't want to. So if we know that we're going to buy a car in 2 or 3 years, we're either going to set cash aside or we're going to build a sinking fund to make sure that we have cash available, when we're going to need the new car or down payment on a mountain home or whatever it might be. Third, we want to make sure that we have a plan for that break glass in case of emergency type of situation for the portfolio. So there's a million ways to do it. There's pros and cons to all of them. We have gone with just laddering bonds through ETFs that have a target maturity. So what we have done, because we're not trying to create alpha there, is we'll essentially put money in bonds that are going to mature in 23, 24, 25, 26. We know what our yield to worst is, and we know those are the dollars that we're going to go to if our equity investments are down. And then the bulk of that, we're trying to invest in the best companies in America and the world and get the full return of the stock market. We're not trying to be the smartest wizards in the room, but we need equities to power a 3-decade plus retirement, because we know that a $10 burrito today at trendline 3% inflation turns into a $25 burrito later on throughout retirement. So the only way that we continue to eat Chipotle for a 3-decade retirement is to continue to invest through ownership in companies.
Yep, absolutely. So there's so many things that I want to discuss based on what you just said. First thing is the alpha. You're talking about exactly what retirement planners love to do, and it's plan. It's, can a client come in our office and sit down with us, and we're utilizing the conversation and understanding their particular situation to think about what may come down the pipe. And not like tomorrow or next week or next month, but potentially years. The AC unit, the roof, the car, the downsize, the upgrade, the sale, the big equity event, those types of things. We're kind of planning, preparing for those. And so what you've done is you've created the distribution strategy as you layer the bonds. And a lot of times with alpha, people think outperformance, like the market is going to return 8 to 9%. So we're trying to get an extra 1 to 2% that alpha. But in this case, the alpha is being prepared, where in 24 months, they come into the office and they're like, I got to get a new car. Yeah, well, we already talked about that. We already have the money set aside. Go ahead and
we have a plan.
What you want.
Yeah, we have a plan for that.
Perfect. And then the bonds are kind of already set up. We know what they're going to do. And this is interesting about what's happening in the marketplace. Everyone's talking about these bank failures, how Silicon Valley Bank had bad bonds on the books, that when there was a run on the bank, they had to sell off bonds that were worth less. Interest rates go up, bond prices go down. But what a lot of banks are saying, including Charles Schwab, who their CEO and founder just came out and put this letter, where we have bonds that we're holding to maturity. The short-term losses are just paper losses. If we hold to maturity or to the yield to worst, that becomes irrelevant because a bond gets paid out. So you're building that same strategy into your client's financial or retirement plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And, thank goodness, we did it when we did it. We didn't have to answer a lot of those hard questions last year. But, that's why we did that as compared to owning a strategic income fund or an intermediate term fund or anything like that. We loved having that target maturity. And we know that, as we get later on in 2023, we'll swap out at the 23s and purchase the 27s. And we'll continue to manage to have 5 years of fixed income needs within the fixed income portfolio. Doesn't mean we have to take the money from fixed income. That's our break glass in case of emergency. If the stock market goes out and has an 18% return, by all means, we will be stripping the money that we need from the portfolio out of the equities. Therefore, selling high, which I think we would all agree is a good thing. But it gives us a place to go to if we're having a down cycle, a down year, whatever the case might be. And it all goes back to behavior. When clients understand the plan, they can follow the plan. Clients can't follow a plan if they don't understand it. But if you can sit down and say, hey, this is the money that we have for the car purchase. This is the money that we have in place if the market goes haywire. If they understand it, they can follow it. If they can't understand it, Lord only knows what they're going to do. But essentially, we always remind people that there are 3 barbarians that are coming after your money now and throughout the rest of your lifetime. The first barbarian is taxes, and you have to make that decision. Is my goal to pay the least amount of taxes this year, or is the goal to pay the least amount of taxes throughout the life of my plan? And that's a completely different answer on how you build the plan based upon the answer to that question. The second barbarian, I know you're super passionate about it, is healthcare, right? We always tell people, if you're going to splurge in any area of your financial plan, it should be investing in your own health. Because if you don't invest in your own health, at some point, it becomes an expense. So that's going to mean different things to different people. That could be hiring a personal trainer. That could be getting the unlimited yoga membership. It could be eating organic food or some combination of all of those things. But do it while it's an investment, and don't wait until it becomes an expense. The third barbarian that's going to attack us is our own behavior. And it almost always starts with the phrase, I just heard in the news, comma, ... Right? And whatever comes after that comma, ... is generally something that's going to take you away from fulfilling a written, formalized plan. I just heard in the news that I need to sell all my stocks and buy bonds. I heard that I need to sell all my bonds and buy Bitcoin. It's so bad, Thatcher. I heard I need to sell my Bitcoin, and the only thing I can buy now is beer, bourbon, and bullets. Right? It's generally some sort of extreme sort of behavior that takes us away from funding the plan based upon the written document.
That's right. And that's that analogy is so good with the 3 barbarians. Taxes, health, and behaviors. Funny that you mentioned funny client stories. My oldest client just came to me the other day, and we're talking about the markets, because I'm similar to you. I believe outside of developing the strategy to make sure we have income for a certain period of time, equities are our best chance of long-term success. That's one way that we're going to continue to keep our purchasing power over long periods of time. But the client said it feels like, probably because he watches way too much TV, it feels like the market has way more down days than up days. And because of that fear and feeling, he was initially wanting to avoid the market. Now, this was a great opportunity to educate them on why we're invested a certain way, what we have, what we're doing, kind of revisiting our plan. But that behavior thing, it gets just toxic, smashed in our head on a regular basis from the television networks that just want to generate ratings. But in all actuality, it couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, the media is not a fiduciary. They're not held to any sort of best interest standard. Their goal is only one goal, and that's to sell advertising dollars. They're there to make money. And the way they do that is by creating clickbait type of material. Nobody is going to make any money in the news if they tell you to build a well-diversified portfolio of the best companies in America and the world, and to make sure that you have a well-thought-out plan of where you need to go to get money when the stock market is down. Not a lot of ad revenue in that. Not a lot of catchy headlines there. They are not your advocate for making great financial decisions. The best thing that you can do on television is to turn it off. The second best thing is find a really compelling show or movie on Netflix. But, the news has certainly cost people probably trillions of dollars.
That's right. It absolutely has, especially with bad decision making. And people don't even talk about how, say, for example, the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index has 3,800 securities within there, Silicon Valley Bank included. But the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank gets lost in the wash because it's carried by what you mentioned, the biggest and most successful diversified companies in our society and in the world. So that's the value of having high quality diversification, not just the Jim Cramer pick Silicon Valley Bank. That's not what we're talking about. And I think that's one thing we're talking about with behaviors is because people think they got to pick, but they don't have to pick. And you have the opportunity in your retirement distribution strategy that when your broad portfolio grows, like you mentioned, we could maybe use those bonds as income, but we can harvest the gains. So our behavior staying composed and controlled and sticking to the plan allowed us more control and flexibility over the long term for sure.
Yeah, and the stock market is the only game in town where if you get an average return compared to everybody else in your ecosystem around you is a great return. Being average in the stock market is great. It puts you in the 1% of investors. Because we've all seen the data, the difference between what the investment generates and what the investor receives is a huge gap. 3, 4, 5%, depending upon different studies, different periods of time. If you can just stay the course, you're going to get average returns. And compared to everybody else, average is exceptional because very few people are getting the average return of the market. We largely exist as behavioral investment counselors, right? And you can't do it, cannot be done without a plan. It just can't be done. People who work with advisors get better outcomes than those who don't.
That's right. Just follow the blueprint. And according to the Spiva report, in the past 15 years, only 6% of actively managed mutual funds outperformed the S&P 500 index. 6%. And
these are brilliant people.
Go ahead.
These are brilliant people. I mean, these are not dumb people just throwing darts at a wall.
Yeah, we went to smaller schools. These guys, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, the Stanford, the biggest names for the biggest firms with the biggest budgets and the biggest flexibility, all the technology and training platforms, and they struggle over long terms to beat the S&P 500. And that doesn't include if the money's in a taxable account, you're getting capital gains distributions. The costs are included in that percentage, the expense ratios, but in general, there's so many more things that are attacking you outside of just the performance of investments.
And whether you're an active person or a passive person, I think it's irrelevant when it comes to allocating dollars to the plan and your success. Like if someone wants to own actively managed ETFs, funds, whatever, like that's great. The behavior is what's going to matter, right? Even if on average an active money manager underperforms the passive index by 80 basis points, you getting 9.2 versus 10 over the life of your plan is still going to be life-changing. So if you have to be active to get invested and to stay invested, by all means do it. By all means do it. Whatever you have to do to stay invested and to get invested, do it. But to your point, Thatcher, people aren't beating the benchmarks. Like if you're going to take some alpha risks, study after study would say small cap, emerging market. And I don't know how relevant that's going to be 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line as access to information continues to improve. But we have to get people invested in equities because that is the easiest, most efficient way historically to protect your income throughout a 3-decade plus retirement, which is what I think that the vast majority of Americans want to do. And then if they have money that they don't use during their lifetime, most people are wanting it to go to their children or grandchildren and continue that financial legacy. And hopefully part of that financial legacy is about financial education to pass down the investment lessons and the financial behavior that led to the success of why they still have money at 90 years old. I mean, those are the lessons that are probably more powerful than the dollars they could potentially pass down.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I would rather you have your money in an actively managed fund if you're going to keep it in there for a long period of time. That's the most important thing, is being able to just let it go, keep it going. And like we talked about before, not trading because of unreasonable market scenarios in the short term. Short-term volatility is not the same as risk. And so being able to stay invested long-term, and depending on your goals, do you want to spend it all, which this will transition to our next point, or do you want to leave a legacy in educating whoever's going to receive that money? Because what is the statistic? I'd have to look it up. And if I find it, I'll put it in the show notes. Of all millionaires that pass their wealth, it's gone by the second or third generation. All the wealth has been completely spent or used up by the second or third generation. So really leaving an educated legacy for your family it's the only chance. It's the only chance.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I've seen study after study that says that the average inheritance, regardless of size, whether it's $5,000 or $5 million, is gone in 18 months. It doesn't
Wow.
matter. It doesn't matter the dollar size. If you're not passing down the necessary education, the blueprint, if you're not sharing the blueprint, which is essentially the treasure map, it's not going to happen. It's the only chance you have of passing this intergenerational wealth. The wealth is up here. It's the knowledge. It's the blueprint. It's the understanding what led to long-term success. It's the, hey, you inherited $10 million and this thing at some point is going to go to $6 million, but 10 is going to go to 6 before it goes to 20. It's you have to have that mindset. You have to know the cost of admission to be a long-term equity investor.
That's right. And this is what we're talking about now is why I really lean into health. Like you mentioned before, your second barbarian is health. So I think health in retirement is a double-edged sword. And here's what I mean. Being very healthy or being healthy in retirement gives you the opportunity to live the optimal retirement where there are no barriers. As long as your money is in place, you have the freedom to do essentially whatever you want. Go where you want, travel where you want, when you want. You are not held down by any physical ailments. In addition, your budget in retirement is not held down by additional healthcare costs. So that's the really good thing about it. The difficult thing about health is statistically, if you're healthy, you're going to live longer. If you're going to live longer, you need
more
to
money.
have a better financial plan because you're going to need more money. Think about $50,000 this year of income. In 30 years, that $50,000 is going to be substantially more. So it's a double-edged sword with health. So tell me a little bit about your second barbarian. How do we build our walls to keep that barbarian out of our retirement planning future?
Yeah, so a couple of the things you can do on the financial side. I'm a huge advocate of the health savings account. If you have access to it, fund it. And by all means, do everything in your power not to use that money during your accumulation period, right? Let those dollars grow. It's the holy grail of investment vehicles. Money goes in pre-tax. Dollars grow tax deferred, which means you don't get a 1099 on it every year. And then if used for qualified expenses, it comes out tax free. So we know that you're going to have you're going to have medical expenses throughout your lifetime. That's great. Pay for them from your checking account, but document them. Get yourself a cloud-based storage drive, get a copy of the bill, get a copy of, the receipt showing where you paid the bill. You can reimburse yourself at any point tax free. So number one, I love the health savings account.
And let me just jump in, just to be clear, for individuals, the health savings account, what Nick was saying is if you use an expense out of pocket right now, but you're still contributing to your health savings account, whether through your employer or you have your own high deductible health plan, I'll put some information in the show notes as well. You could pay for that now, invest the money in your HSA, let it grow over a long period of time. So you're actually paying for an expense years prior from earnings off money that went into your health savings account as opposed to paying for it right now, which is an extremely cool feature about the HSA.
It's awesome. Like it's the number one thing, that I'd be thinking about if I'm in accumulation mode. If you have access to it and it makes sense for you and your family, check it out. Now, if you think you're going to have a child and you're going to have large, expenses in a given year, maybe you want to, avoid the HSA, but HSA number one, number two, if you're in your accumulation years, I would certainly look at having a disability insurance policy, do what you can to protect your income. For many people, it is your largest asset is your ability to create an income. It's often slept on. A lot of times within group plans, you might think you have better coverage than you actually do, because there might be a cap on how much it will pay out. It might say 60%. But a lot of times you'll see monthly limits of 5,000. So if your monthly income is 15,000, but it's only going to pay out 5, really it's more of a 33% payout. So just be cognizant of that. And then, third, it's never too young to start thinking about long-term care. I mean, I know it's not something that the average 40-year-old probably is thinking about, but now's the time to do it. Younger and healthier, get it started. You can do, a traditional long-term care plan with an inflation rider. So I like those things. Those are what I'd be doing as a young person, someone entering retirement. Maybe it's not traditional long-term care if they don't already have it in place. You might have to look at a hybrid life insurance policy that has a long-term care rider. But, depending upon study you see, the average long-term care expense is about $250,000. Generally occurs between 78, 83 years old. So $250,000, it's a big number to plan for. And some people can get approved for it. Some people can't. If you can't get approved for it, you probably have a higher likelihood that you're going to have the expense. So you have to put that into your plan of at least a $250,000 expense in today's dollars. If you're 60 years old, you're going to have to inflate that at whatever number you choose, 3 to 6% for an expense 20 years in the future. So plan accordingly. You can't ignore the elephant in the room that could completely wipe out, that family legacy.
Yeah. And long-term care is so interesting because a lot of times people talk about the decision, am I going to get long-term care to help with end-of-life planning, insurance needs, meet 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, or am I going to self-insure? But the funny thing about that decision is when you're 40 and you've only got maybe a couple $100,000, you've got kids running around, you got houses, you maybe got a little bit of debt here and there, thinking about accumulating enough to self-insure is almost not even imaginable. That the opportunity to self-insure almost comes when you're like in your 60s and you just so happen to have been successful enough where when you come to someone like you or me, you can sit down and we talk about long-term care and you have the opportunity to self-insure. But when you're in your 40s, to think about potentially in the future, 30, 40, 50, 60 years down the road, being able to support $300,000, $350,000 a year for a couple of years for you alone or maybe a spouse, it's almost an unreasonable expectation. So long-term care and disability insurance cannot be slept on at all.
Yeah. And it's nearly impossible to hedge against that until you have the dollars in place. Like you just can't do it any other way. It is a financial wrecking ball if you haven't planned for it or unless you have some incredible stretch of good luck. We had a family member who recently passed away at 94 years old, never invested her entire life, never had long-term care. However, she had incredible relationships with people. She invested deeply into relationships with people, and they essentially provided care for her the last 2 years of her life. She was incredibly blessed by great friends. She was incredibly blessed to have those relationships. But the reality of it is, she got lucky from a financial planning standpoint because 99.9% of people would have ended up completely destitute and probably in a Medicaid facility, which if you've ever been to one, you wouldn't want a loved one, in there. They do the best they can. They're trying, but it's not an enviable position to have a loved one in or yourself. I sure wouldn't want to be in there.
Absolutely. So besides like the nuts and bolts, which these are all extremely good topics, and we could have a separate podcast on each one of them individually, but I take a weird route and I really try to choose my audience carefully depending on which clients, which prospects I'm talking to. But the idea of actually starting to be active and starting to actually take control of the future expenses and costs in retirement is something that a lot of advisors don't talk about.
Yeah.
But it's becoming more common to be, although I'm not a doctor, not a medical professional. And if you're getting this, you're thinking about going to exercise and you haven't exercised before, go talk to your doctor first. Make sure you don't have any health problems. But it's the idea of it's time to start thinking about taking care of the one body and mind that you get because we don't get replacements.
Yeah. And I just listed off a handful of things that you could do from like the financial side. The stuff you do on the lifestyle side trumps the financial side. I mean, it's not even close. Like you said, you get one body, take care of yourself. Now, I'm not telling you if you've never lifted a weight in your entire life, this is not the time to try to get a PR on some sort of Bulgarian split squat. Not the time, right? Have a plan, work with a professional, get a trainer, find yourself a nice local CrossFit gym, whatever the case is, find out what it is for you. but absolutely the lifestyle stuff, getting your body right, getting your mind right, that is going to trump a lot of the stuff that we can do on the financial planning side. But the beauty, if you think about the Venn diagram of what we're talking about, it is if you take control of the things you can do from a lifestyle component and overlay that with doing the right things from a financial planning component, where those two things intersect is where it can be incredibly powerful and transformative to pass on an incredible legacy, far more than money, to generations. That's real kind of that multi-generational wealth. And I know one of the things that I texted you about was grip strength. I mean, I find the research on grip strength to be incredibly interesting. And my dad, who is 78 years old, is one of the strongest guys I've ever met in my life. Just naturally, like country strong, has the handshake that could, break someone's hand unintentionally. He's built houses. He swung hammers all his life. He's just a strong dude. And who knows what will happen? He might live to be 138. But, he's always moving. He never sits, super active. And you see it with people in retirement. People who stay active, they have a much more fulfilling life throughout retirement than people who are more sedentary.
That's right. And the grip strength thing is so compelling. I don't know I think you probably got that from Peter Attia.
Yeah.
So anybody that cares about their longevity at all, if there's anybody out there that's listening to this and they care about their longevity, just go listen to Peter Attia. He is the subject matter expert on longevity. But the reason he talks about grip strength is the majority of unexpected deaths of people over the age of 65 come from falling. And there's a strong correlation to having grip strength and arm strength that protects a person from unexpected falls so they don't have an unexpected death, the early passing or going into the hospital or having a catastrophic event. So you're talking about your dad, 78, grip strength. There's reason to expect that if he falls or runs into a wall or trips, there's the ability for his body to be able to withstand any sort of unexpected happenstance or something. So that's the whole point about something little is just grip strength, carrying some dumbbells, strengthening your body, literally carries your life extra years that most people won't really discuss.
Yeah. So over the weekend, so my dad does yoga twice a week. And over the weekend, he was over at the house. We had a little home project. He was up on the ladder outside and he fell off the ladder. But he was able to grab on to the bar on the swing set, and he had the strength. He just held himself up there. My wife was out there with him. She moves the ladder, gets it under him. But the average 78-year-old is not doing a dead hang for 22nd on a 2x4.
Nope.
So that is the difference when craziness happens. Is your body strong enough? Do you have the grip strength? Do you have the core strength? Do you have the flexibility to maintain your safety in an unsafe situation?
That's right. And that's the cognitive element as well. So not only we're talking about like the musculoskeletal structure, bones, joints, ligaments, muscles, tendons, making sure they're as structurally sound as we can provide as we age later on. But the ability to exercise helps connect the cognition with the body. So even your dad's ability in that moment, his reflexes, his mind's ability to, in that moment, connect the dots like, oh, I got to grab, I got to hang on, or even just feeling comfortable to get on the ladder to know like, if something kind of bad happens, I feel pretty confident I'll be able to grab something. And maybe that was more subconscious, but the mind plays a huge role. And what I talk about a lot is I call it the retirement plan is built up of two things. What you've talked about already is the financial plan, the nuts and bolts, the money, the dollars, the account types, the markets. But then there's the life plan. How do you want to live the life? And those together create your retirement plan. And your story about your dad is exactly what we're talking about. There's probably a bunch of people that we know where that happened. and something catastrophic happened. Broken
Right.
hip, broken arms, hospital stays, those types of things.
Right. And you're probably familiar with the studies. The number one type of fall that's going to change someone's life expectancy is a broken hip.
Yep.
Because you have so much blood flow, that goes through there, and it's never the same. So anything that we can do to encourage people to get stronger, to stay calm under duress. And I think that's some of the benefits of doing the CrossFit or group training is, helps you stay calm under stress. You're used to working under stress. So I think those are great things. But like you said, how you want to live in retirement is super important. We need to do our best as planners to encourage people to be active and to invest in their hobbies and find new hobbies. I have a lot of retired people in my community that have taken up pickleball, and it's getting people off of the couch for the first time in decades. And they found something that they love. Is pickleball CrossFit? No, but it's you're staying active, you're moving. It's a heck of a lot better than CNBC for the body. I'll tell you that. And it's good fellowship with people too. So I think that's an important part of getting out and exercising. If you can do it with other people, it's so important for retirees to feel that connection, and for all of us to feel that connection with people. And, so often it's very tough. Maybe people move across the country to be closer to loved ones, but they don't necessarily have that day-to-day fellowship and connection with other people. And sometimes you can get that in exercise in a way, especially for introverts, that's a little bit easier. It's an easier introduction to join a group playing pickleball, or a group in the neighborhood that's a walking group or something like that. It's a little bit of an easy entry.
That's right. I love it. You took the word right out of my mouth. I was about to interrupt you. The connection, things like pickleball, a golf league, a hiking group, a walking group, a biking group, a running group, some sort of calisthenics class, depending on kind of where you're at in your fitness journey. It's just about creating that community and the connection. And don't get me started on CrossFit. I'm a big CrossFit enthusiast. I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm all about CrossFit. But the reason I love CrossFit is CrossFit's one of the very few fitness institutions that really talks about the medical aspect of fitness and training. They really have incorporated the past couple of years, literal doctors and medical professionals into their education program to really merge the value of strength training and fitness. And that's what, again, Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman talk a lot about, is the idea of there's a correlation to how much muscle mass you have and how long you live. In addition, those types of things are probably going to help your pickleball game a little bit, or your golf game, or playing with your kids, or traveling, or hiking. I think these are really important things that people don't want to talk about, because maybe they feel like they've missed their boat. They missed the boat to be able to exercise because they're 56 or 62. Which isn't the case. I have a client, she's in her late 50s, 59. She just started CrossFit. And so it's just really cool to see those things happen, however it happens, for whatever clients we're working with.
And the CrossFit community is a wonderful community for beginners, because I would say that the vast majority of CrossFit boxes across the country would do whatever they could to welcome those people with open arms in a very non-judgmental way that you wouldn't find as much at your normal box gym or something like that. People are going to come around them and celebrate them and encourage them and make them feel welcome. But whatever your interest is, start. It's never too late. And if you want to have a different relationship in the way that you play with your children or grandchildren, it's never too late to try to improve upon those things. I mean, my wife and I, we often talk about, we do a lot of things for our vision. One of the things that excites both of us is that we want to be the place where our children, grandchildren, and hopefully great grandchildren come when we're 80 years old. We want to carve the turkey or whatever at Thanksgiving and Christmas. We want to be the place that everybody comes. And part of that is we want to be in good enough health, good enough shape to be able to do fun things with them and be able to interact with them. We don't want to be in a situation where all we can do is sit in a chair and, watch them from afar. We want to be interactive and enjoy life together.
Absolutely. And you want your kids to be able to flourish and excel. Not only do you want to be involved and be able to have those activities, but you want to be able to get out of the way. You want your kids and family to be able to flourish in their 30s, 40s, and 50s when things could arguably be the most difficult. In those 20 years of those accumulation years, there could be a lot going on. The last thing you want to be as a parent is a burden to your kids that limits their ability to work on their skills and grow and develop their future as well. So, I mean, I think you nailed it right there.
Yep. I think we all want our kids to be our kids and not our caregivers, right? And there's things that we can do today, regardless of age, to do everything we can to give ourselves a higher probability, right? That goes back to a little bit of the engineering. You can't completely take the risk away, right? You could do CrossFit, you could eat organic, you could do all the right things, and something could still happen. You can never completely transfer 100% of the risk. What we're talking about is giving yourself and your family a higher probability of better outcomes.
That's right. It's funny that you even mentioned that too, is for anybody, I know I'm a big CrossFitter, talk about it a lot already, but Matt Fraser is obviously the best CrossFit athlete ever. There's Rich Froning, kind of Matt Fraser on the top of the mountain is the best ever. Now they're both technically retired somewhat, but Matt Fraser, he just blew out his knee in jiu-jitsu class. He tore his ACL, messed up his MCL, PCL, LCL, meniscus, everything. So you can never completely diversify that risk. But when you think about longevity, all that is a little speed bump. His body's going to recover. The doctors are going to clean up the knee. He's going to get back to running, squatting, do whatever he's doing, even probably doing some jiu-jitsu. But when you think about Matt Fraser, this knee doesn't shorten his lifespan. The length of time that he's going to survive is still statistically longer and healthier regardless of this. So the person that sits on the couch and does nothing could still get injured. At least Matt Fraser was doing something active, kind of chasing the vision of having the best life he could have. Break it down, fix it, and recover it.
And it's a lot easier to come back from an injury when you're starting from a better spot.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Don't wait until something bad happens to start to make a change, right? Be proactive, right? Do whatever you can today to take that first step. I think about the movie What About Bob? I don't know why. Great movie, Bill Murray. Baby steps, right? We're talking about baby, start wherever you're at and take a step forward in the right direction and then continue, take another baby step, right? You're talking about the power of 1% compounding over time. Let time be your greatest ally, but you got to start today. You can't compound on zero. You have to start and you have to move forward.
That's right. Dude, baby steps is a great analogy because it's literally like that going to the gym or going to find a financial plan or anything. It's baby steps out of your chair. Baby steps, get your clothes on. Baby step out the door. Baby step, get in your car. Baby step, get on my computer and do a Google search. It's just those little things. Baby step, get the automation going. Baby step, work on your nutrition. Baby step, get some life insurance. Baby step, say no to that debt. Like those little things compound over time. And I love it. You can't compound on zero. 0 times 0 still equals 0.
You can double it. Doesn't matter. It's still 0. So you got to start. Starting is the most powerful thing. Automate whatever you can. That could be saving $100 a month. That could be having a process. You put in a little alarm on your phone that at 10 o'clock every night, you're going to lay out your gym clothes for the next morning, right? Automate everything in your process. Create little cheat codes for yourself to be successful. Little alarm reminders, Post-it notes, whatever it takes to take the logical next step from where you're at.
I love it. That's great. So we've been talking for about an hour here and we could go forever, but here's what I want to do next. I want you to tell everyone where they can find you. So Nic is one of the wordsmiths out there. You find him a lot on LinkedIn. I'll let him tell you in a book that he has that he was able to take his images and present them in a very digestible way to help build your wealth. So Nic, tell everyone where they can find you, what they can buy. Let's give people some knowledge.
Yeah, thanks, Thatcher. So the book is called Visual Finance. I jokingly like to tell people it's the best book you'll never read. It's literally just 40 images that I draw that have a financial planning component to them that tells a little bit of a story with a sketch. If you want to learn more about kind of what that picture is all about, there's a QR code on every page. It has a short 60 to 90 second video with kind of a real life financial planning application to it. If you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is probably where I hang out the most. I have a weird last name, Nielsen. It's Nielsen. And then our website is knowmyplan.com. So Thatcher, really appreciate the opportunity just to hang out with you. You're one of my favorite people to follow. What you're doing on the podcast is amazing. Your YouTube channel is can't miss content.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Your book is amazing. I'm actually going to, in the show notes, hit a link on Amazon for Visual Finance from Nic Nielsen, the great Nic Nielsen. Dude, I appreciate your time.
Always, Thatcher. Thank you.
All right. See ya. Thanks, everybody.